Ah, look around, boys and girls. Kindred spirits, the sun is shining. It is a lovely spring day. The sky is blue. Little white puffy clouds are floating overhead. Beautiful flowers are blooming all over this wonderful nature of ours. What a perfect day. What a perfect day, kindred spirits. What a wonderful, perfect day to do some homework. Welcome back, boys and girls, to Learning English with Anne of Green Gables. Oh, what's going on, Anne?
Let's start.
Oh, yes. Today, we are going to continue Chapter 1, Miss Rachel Lynn is Surprised. But today, we're going to do a little bit of retelling and writing.
Am I talking too much? Oh, people are always telling me I do, and I can't stop if I make my mind up to do it.
You can talk all you like. I don't mind.
I don't mind either, boys and girls. You can talk all you like, just like Anne. In fact, you have to talk a little bit right now. It's time to retell. While we read Anne of Green Gables together, boys and girls, we're going to stop after each chapter. We're going to think about what happened, and then we're going to retell what happens in that chapter. It's a great way to practice your English. It's a great way to help you remember what's going on in the story. And it's a great way to help you understand and think about what's going on in the story. So what is retelling? Well, if you studied some of our previous series, some of our previous courses, you will remember that retelling just means to tell again. Oh yes, there it is. When we retell a story, we tell the important events and details in the right order. Why do we retell stories? You might also remember this. Retelling helps us understand and remember the events and ideas in a text. A text just means something you're reading or maybe something you're watching, a story or a book or an article or something like that. Retelling also gives us a chance to practice speaking and using our new words, and I hope you do use your new words in our retelling, or at least 5 of them. Remember, good readers retell before, during, and after the reading. Today, we're going to retell and think about what happened in Chapter 1. But when you're reading anything, it's a good idea to do a little retelling, even if it's only in your head. Before reading, we like to think about and retell what has already happened in the story. This helps us refresh our memory and gets us ready to read the next chapter. So before you go on to read Chapter 2, stop for a moment and think about what happened in Chapter 1. What about during reading? Well, good readers stop as they read to make sure they understand what they are reading. This helps us remember important events and information. It also helps me become less confused. Boys and girls, have you ever been reading a story and you're like, wait, hold on, stop, what's going on? And then you have to think about what happened. That's kind of what you do when you're reading a story. You retell it to yourself so you don't get confused. And for us today, the most important time to retell a story is after reading. When you finish reading a chapter, stop to think about it. Think about what just happened and what might happen next. And you can also retell the story out loud, which is what we are going to do today. But Mr. Daniel, Anne of Green Gables chapters can be very long and they use many difficult words. How am I going to remember everything while I'm doing the retelling? Good question, Mr. Daniel. Backwards, Mr. Daniel. Mr. Leonard. To help us organize our thoughts and remember what we're going to say in our retelling, we're going to use an organizer. Wow, Mr. Daniel, that is amazing. I never heard of that before. Thank you, Mr. Leonard. I'm being sarcastic. Oh, okay. Well, go away then. Boys and girls, today we will use this organizer to help us. And all you have to do is fill in each box, and this will help you remember for when you are actually retelling. So, First thing we do is to skim through the chapter. To skim means to look through something you're reading very quickly, not to read the whole thing again. Number 2, we want to take note of key details and write them in our organizer. Key details when we're doing a retelling are things like characters, settings, events, problems, and other information that someone listening to you might find important or useful. So, Mr. Daniel, are you saying we should give all the details that could help someone understand the story who's never read it before? Exactly, Mr. Leonard. Understanding which details are important and which details are not important is something that you will get better at the more you practice. So don't worry if you miss it the first few times. You will get it eventually. And number 3, use this organizer to help you retell the chapter out loud. You don't need to read from it, but it's there for you if you do need it. Number 4, try to use some of our new language targets in the retelling. You're going to have to pick 5 out of all of the many, many new words we learn each chapter. All right, let's begin. Can you please go back and skim through the chapter and choose the important details you want to include in your retelling. So grab your book, get your organizer, and skim through the chapter. I will do the same. Where's my book? Okay, I'm back. Boys and girls, are you back? Did you do it? Great. Let's begin. First, I'll show you the details that I wrote down. Yours might be a little different. First, the title. Well, that's easy. Mrs. Rachel Lynde is surprised. And now we'll list the characters in the chapter. First of all, there's Mrs. Rachel Lynde. There's Matthew Cuthbert, although he doesn't say anything. And there's Marilla Cuthbert. And now the setting. Boys and girls, don't forget, the setting is where and when a story takes place. So let's talk about when the story takes place. It takes place in early summer, and it takes place during the day. Okay, where does it take place? It takes place in a little village called Avonlea, on the island called Prince Edward Island in Canada. It also takes place in the late 19th century. That means it takes place about 140 or 150 years ago. Now, we don't have to list those ones every time we retell. We're going to just list those small places in the story, like, for example, Rachel Lynde's house, or Green Gables. That's the house of Matthew and Marilla Cuthbert. For our language targets, I just want you to choose 5. I took my language targets from the language targets in the Anne of Green Gables book. Maybe you can do the same, or you can pick other language targets that you like and want to learn. So my language targets are decorum, intricate, deftly, ponder, and qualm. Oh my gosh, some of those words are very tricky. I'm going to have to think about how I'm going to use them in my retelling. Next, for each chapter, think about what the problem is. Sometimes there's more than one problem in a chapter. Just pick one. I think that's good enough. Try to make it the most important or interesting problem in the chapter. In this chapter, I think the main problem is that Mrs. Lynde can't figure out where Matthew Cuthbert is going or why. And this drives her crazy. She needs to find out. So to solve her problem, she goes over to Green Gables and talks to Marilla Cuthbert. And she finds out that the Cuthberts are adopting a boy. Next, try to think of the main events in the story. What happens in the middle and what happens at the end of a chapter. Sometimes the beginning, middle, and end isn't clear, so just divide it up the best you can. So here are some of the details about the first chapter that I wrote down. You'll notice that I wrote in full sentences. Miss Rachel Lynde, the Avonlea busybody and gossip, is knitting at her window, keeping a sharp eye on Avonlea. You don't need to write sentences here. I did it because it's our very first retelling, and I think having full sentences will help me for my first 2 or 3 retellings. It can also help me remember when to use our language targets. For example, Mrs. Lynde can usually ponder a bit, then deftly figure out unusual happenings, but today she is stumped. Anyway, I'm not going to tell you these now because I'm going to tell you them in a moment when I'm doing my retelling. But if you want to press pause, you can read the details that I put here. Or you can look on the worksheets that I sent with the lesson. Okay, I think it is just about that time, boys and girls. I think it is just about that time for our retelling. Let's retell. I will go first. I will try to keep my retelling at around 3 minutes. I hope I can do it. Listen to how I do it. See if you can do it better than Mr. Daniel. I bet you can after just a few tries. Are you ready? Okay, here is Mr. Daniel's retelling. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, kindred spirits, here is my retelling of Anne of Green Gables, Chapter 1. Mrs. Rachel Lynde is surprised. The characters in this chapter are Mrs. Rachel Lynde, the town busybody, Matthew Cuthbert, and Marilla Cuthbert. The setting of this story is on an early summer day at Avonlea in Prince Edward Island in Canada about 150 years ago in the late 19th century. More specifically, the chapter takes place at Mrs. Rachel Lynde's house and also at Green Gables, the Cuthberts' house. The problem in this chapter is that Mrs. Rachel Lynde sees Matthew riding a horse and buggy, and she cannot figure out what he's doing. He should be in the fields. This drives her crazy, and so to solve the problem, she goes over to Green Gables and talks to Marilla, who tells her that they are adopting an orphan boy. What happens in Chapter 1? Well, at the beginning of the chapter, we meet Mrs. Rachel Lynde. Oh, the author also describes an intricate little stream that goes through the forest, and it's all very wild, and then it gets to Mrs. Rachel Lynde's house, and it follows proper behavior and decorum. It almost describes the stream as if it's afraid of Mrs. Rachel Lynde. Anyway, she's sitting at her window, and she's knitting and keeping a sharp eye on the comings and goings out of Avonlea. And that's when she sees Matthew Cuthbert riding his horse and buggy and wearing his best clothes. We also learn that Matthew is very shy and not married, and he lives with his sister, Marilla. Now, Mrs. Lynde is very surprised by this because it's very unusual. Matthew should be out working in his fields, but he's not. And, you know, Mrs. Lynde can usually ponder for a bit, and then she can deftly figure out what's going on whenever she sees anything unusual in Avonlea. But today she's stumped. She doesn't know what Matthew's doing or where he's going. In the middle of the chapter, Mrs. Lynde decides that she can't stand it. She needs to know what's happening. So she decides to walk to Green Gables, which is the Cuthberts' house, and talk to Matthew's sister, Marilla. Now, Marilla, who seems to be a very serious woman herself, Marilla isn't surprised to see Rachel, and she's not that happy either because she knows that Mrs. Rachel Lynde will go and spread the news all around town. Mrs. Lynde just tells Marilla that she's worried that Matthew's going to see a doctor and maybe something's wrong. Marilla says, no, that's not it. Matthew is actually going to the train station to pick up an orphan boy that they are adopting from Nova Scotia. They don't even know which boy it is. They asked one of their neighbors to pick out a boy from the orphan asylum. And Marilla says it's because Matthew's getting old and he needs some help. Now, Mrs. Lynde is very surprised by this. In fact, she's shocked. She's so surprised. And she tells Marilla this is a terrible idea. And she tells Marilla all these scary stories about orphans who went to live with families and turned out to be criminals. Marilla says that she also has qualms about it. But having kids is always a risk, even when they're your own kids. So she says she's willing to take the risk so that Matthew can have some help, and that would make her happy. Now the chapter ends with Mrs. Lynde leaving Marilla's house to go spread the news all around Avonlea. And she's still shocked and surprised, and she feels sorry for the orphan because Marilla and Matthew Cuthbert are old and they don't know anything about raising kids. And that is how chapter 1 ends. How did I do? All right, boys and girls, now it is your turn. See if you can retell chapter 1. But before you do, I think you should also remember these few pointers about retelling. Tips for retelling. Tip number 1, try not to read from your organizer. You can look at it to help you remember things, but the less reading you do and the more speaking your own sentences, the better off you'll be. And number 2, use your own sentences. Even if you make mistakes, it's better to use your own English, your own words, and your own sentences. Number 3, try to speak clearly and with feeling. Don't talk like a robot. In fact, you can even act out different parts of the story if you really want to. That makes it easier for you. Other tips? Try to keep it short. I know, I have trouble with that one. Also, remember, retelling a chapter isn't easy. In fact, it's very difficult, but you will get better at it the more often you practice. And last, if you really want to get good at it, you can record your retelling and watch them or show them to your teacher and ask what they think and how you can improve. Okay, are you ready? Go ahead and retell chapter 1, and I'll see you back here for a little bit of writing. All right, let's head to the schoolhouse. Let's go there with Anne, and let's do a little bit of writing together. Are you ready? Let's do it. Today we are going to write something I call a descriptive lead. Sometimes you can also call it a snapshot lead. Again, if you have studied Magic Treehouse and Harry Potter, you will know what a lead is. But in case you forgot, let's talk about it now. So what is a lead? A lead is just the very beginning of your story. It's how you begin any piece of writing. Now, why is a strong lead important? Because a good lead makes the reader interested and want to read more. There are many good ways to start a story or a piece of writing. Here are just a few. But today we're only going to be looking at one, the snapshot lead or the descriptive lead. With a descriptive or snapshot lead, you begin the story by painting a picture in the reader's mind. You can describe the scene, the setting, and then you move into the story after doing that. It's a very good way to get the reader into the world of your characters. And you do this by using good imagery. Imagery, things that appeal to our senses, things the reader can see or hear or smell or taste. And to paint good pictures, we don't just talk about what the reader sees, we can also talk about other things. Descriptive language gives good details about how something looks, sounds, smells, feels, or tastes. Here is an example. Boring. Ice skating is my favorite sport. Better. It's 10 degrees below zero, and the river is frozen a foot thick. It makes snapping sounds like the limbs of a tree cracking. A lone figure glides along the black ice, moving towards the city. The only sound is the scraping of each blade as it bites into the river. That's me doing my favorite sport, ice skating. Wow, that really painted a wonderful, great, vivid picture in my mind. But descriptive leads don't just paint a picture of the setting. They can also tell us some important things about the story or even tell us how to feel about the story. Descriptions can not only paint a picture of the setting, they can also help create a mood or give important information about a character or theme. Let's look at the descriptive lead of Anne of Green Gables. The story begins by talking about the road going through Avonlea, and it dips into a little hollow, and the road is fringed with alders and ladies' eardrops, flowers, and it's crossed by a brook. And then the author describes the brook. It was reputed to be an intricate, headlong brook in its earlier course through the woods, with dark secrets of pool and cascade. But by the time it reached Lynn's Hollow, it was a quiet, well-conducted little stream. So this gives us clues not only to the setting, but it also kind of tells what the story is going to be about. This wild, mysterious thing comes to Avonlea and has to learn how to behave. And it gives us these clues by talking about the stream as if it's a person, right? It was probably conscious that Mrs. Rachel was sitting at her window, keeping a sharp eye on everything that passed. So not only does it paint the scene, it tells us a little bit about Mrs. Rachel Lynde, and it also gives clues about the story that is coming our way. It's a great descriptive lead. That's it, boys and girls. Kindred spirits, now it is your turn. Go write a descriptive lead just like Lucy Maud Montgomery and Anne of Green Gables. Oh, no, don't worry. We're going to make it nice and simple. This is our first lesson. We don't want to go too crazy. So all you have to do is fill out this little organizer and then use that to create your descriptive lead. So what we're going to do is we're going to think of a different setting for Anne of Green Gables. For example, what if this story took place in your own country? Maybe it took place in the past, maybe it took place in the future, or maybe it took place in somewhere completely different from your own country. And then you can think of some images in your mind that you can use to help paint a picture for your reader. Also, think of some details that you can include that give the reader clues about the era, the time that your story takes place in. Examples might include transportation technology, clothing styles, or even word choice. I'll show you what I mean in a moment. At the end of your description, or in the middle if you like, or even in the beginning, but try to get at least one character into your descriptive lead. I'm going to make my character just like Mrs. Rachel Lynde, and you can do the same. You don't really have to say much about them. Just put them in there somewhere. Okay, so let's begin by thinking of a name for your story. I'm going to set mine, I was in Thailand. I'm going to set mine in Thailand in the past, and it's going to be on an island. So maybe I'll call it Anne of Dolphin Island. And the era is going to be in the past, just like Anne of Green Gables. I'm going to set it around 1875. And it's also going to be in the morning. And it's also going to be in the summer. And the name of the town, we'll call it Silver Beach, because it takes place on a sunny tropical island. Okay, so now that you have the name of your story, you can think of some images you want to put in your descriptive lead. I'm thinking of a tropical island, so I think images that would really help paint a picture would be sparkling turquoise waters and golden skies in the morning, or maybe at sunset. Oh no, it's the morning. Let's see, what else? Oh, I think of palm trees rustling and bending in the wind. And when I was in Thailand, once I saw a giant monitor lizard swimming past the water while I was eating breakfast. Okay, those will tell the reader that it is a beautiful tropical island. Now I have to think of how I'm going to tell the reader that this takes place in the past. I'm not going to say, this story takes place in 1875. I have to show the reader by giving clues, by putting things in or leaving things out. For example, I said transportation technology. That's a great way to show what time your story is set in. In the past, they didn't have motorboats or electricity, so maybe on this island there are only sailboats and canoes, no motors. And speaking of technology, maybe one thing I'll make sure to leave out is any electricity or electrical devices, because there wasn't any electricity back then. And also, there are no telephones, so communication had to come from travelers. So maybe there's a surprise there. A surprise arrival. And the character that I'm going to put in my descriptive lead will be just like Mrs. Lynde, and I'll call her Ratini because it sounds a bit like Rachel, and she's going to be the wife of the village chief. And she's also going to be a little bit bossy and matronly. Matronly means she feels like she's a mother to everybody in the village. If there's a way you can show what your character is like, that would be great. But if you don't worry about it. So now we are going to use this organizer, and we are going to write a paragraph. to begin our own version of Anne of Green Gables, set in a different time or a different place. Instructions 2. Using the organizer above, write a descriptive lead paragraph for a story you might write that takes place in the past or future. Be sure to include concrete imagery and some clues about the time your story takes place. Sketch your scene. You can sketch it before or after. It might help you write if you sketch something before you start writing. Here is my painting.
No.
No?
No.
Okay, it's not my painting. You're right. Anyway, I used this one when I was trying to visualize my story. Here we go. This is what I wrote. The sun had just peaked above the horizon, silhouetting the fishermen against the golden sky as they paddled out to sea. Behind the cluster of fishing huts on long stilts, palm trees bent and waved towards the sea in a stiff offshore breeze, as if trying to signal the little wooden boats to return to shore. A water lizard swam silently past the huts as Ratini, a serious-looking, heavy-set woman, sat on her deck mending a fishing net. She hissed at the lizard and looked out across the sparkling turquoise waters just as a sailboat silently glided into view. Ratini scowled. There wasn't supposed to be a boat for 3 days. Okay, there's my lead, boys and girls. See if you can come up with your own descriptive lead. Paint a picture for your readers and show the setting, the time, and the place where your version of Anne of Green Gables might take place. All right, and that's it for our retelling and writing lesson, boys and girls. The important thing is to just get writing. Don't think about it too much. Just get that writing done and make sure you're using your own words. In our next lesson, we will be looking at Chapter 2, our main reading. See you soon. Bye-bye, kindred spirits.